Well, let's just talk first of all about the 2021 World Food Security theme, Safe Food Today for a Healthy Tomorrow. Professor, I'm going to start with you.
So this is very important. The United Nations celebrate on the 7th of June every year since 2018 World Food Safety Day. And it's very important that we must understand why, because this is about urgent need to raise awareness at all levels. And that's very important. And to promote and facilitate actions for global food safety. And that's very important to know.
Now, Thabang, your research project actually investigated the microbiological safety of fresh produce grown and supplied to schools to prepare meals for the current school feeding programs. What were some of the key findings in that research, and how does that tie in with foodborne diseases, for example?
Okay, so yeah, my master's project was on that, and I think the key findings I would like to highlight were that we did find presumptive foodborne pathogens on the fresh produce, but the good thing is that there are measures in place to stop the growth of the pathogens, like cooking, for example, for which all food at the schools are cooked. But then we would like to highlight that there is still a risk, and we would like to encourage the department and the schools to take extra measures in making sure that we do not get foodborne disease outbreaks at schools like we have seen in some of the newspaper articles and, yeah, on the news as well.
Now, Professor, can you also touch on that issue of foodborne diseases? I know that Thabang mentioned a specific area where it's food being provided to students, and that's through a national feeding program. What about other people that perhaps grow their own fresh produce and tend to have to store it before cooking it? How can they sort of apply safer measures of doing that and reduce that incidence of getting diseases that are foodborne?
Okay, so we must just remember microorganisms are everywhere. Nature selects. So you will get microorganisms, and at certain levels they may cause harm to humans when we ingest it. We also get certain pathogens that specifically human pathogens, and they find their way to food via often animal feces that contaminate our water, and our water is used to irrigate our crops. So it obviously is a whole cycle. We talk about One Health. So it moves through the human, animal, plant, and environment, and that's very important. So we have to break the cycle. We need to be aware of what is safe food practices, and it starts with the water we use to irrigate our crops. Whether you're at home, a small-scale farmer, whether you're a big commercial farmer, your water must be safe. It must be potable, and it must not have any pathogens, human pathogens. We also talk about waterborne pathogens, and we also use the term zoonotic pathogens. And those are typical, your Escherichia coli, which moves through the animal gut. And it's very important because they cycle through the whole ecosystems. So we talk about safe food systems. So your water must be safe, your hands must be safe, and thank goodness for COVID, because we're now all aware of washing hands regularly, hand sanitizers, so that's benefiting us in the food sector. And we know that surfaces where we prepare food and environments in which we store food must be safe. It must be clean and hygienic, and that's very important. And we must maintain the cold chain if it is a product that needs to be kept cold. Not all food product must be kept cold, but once you've cooked it, you have to consume it. And once you start storing it, you're introducing a risk. And it's not only foodborne pathogens. I want to make this point very clear. We also talk about toxins. We talk about heavy metals that's in our environment. And we talk about fungi growing on food that actually produces toxins that can cause liver cancer, other forms of cancer. So it's wider than just microorganisms, but all food must be safe and not hazardous to the consumer.
Professor, then that means that it's not just enough to eat a lot of fresh produce or, freshly harvested fruit. There's actually more to it than that.
yes, there's a very important responsibility on each and every one. We need to know what is safe food. We need to make sure our food is safe. In fact, it's a moral issue to me, because every human being has a right to safe food. And if you serve food to your child or your family and friends, it's not safe. That's contravening that trust. And you need to be aware. You need to make sure the food is safe. You need to make sure it's prepared safely. You must make sure you keep it safe and you grow it safe. And we know for retailers and big farmers, they will comply to international standards that requires them to be safe, to prepare food safe, to grow it safe, to transport it safe, and to sell safe food to the users. And that's why we've got sell by dates. That's why we've got food that will be removed from the food system if it's deemed not safe. But I want to add, government has a responsibility there, and that's very important because they are the responsible for our food system to regulate it. But remember, in food, the whole food system, everyone has a role to play, and we all must make sure the food is safe. We cannot just say it's industry or retailers or government. It starts with us.
Now, Thabang, do you think that there's enough awareness then on the different types of food or waterborne diseases and how to avoid them, and also just this whole value chain of the safe food system that the professor has just broken down for us?
No, I don't think that there is enough awareness. I think after the listeriosis outbreak, we started then learning about, foodborne diseases because listeriosis is a foodborne disease. And then, it's too bad that now people you relate it to polony. But after that, people started asking questions. They started finding out about what is this, what's happening, can it kill us, can it cause disease, and how does it get treated? So after that, there was a bit of awareness, and that should be ongoing each day, every year. I mean, we have food every day. We eat about 3 or more times a day. So everyone should be aware that there are risks involved. And if there are risks involved, how are you protecting yourself and protecting the people around you? So I think more needs to be done.
Yes.
To grow that awareness amongst other people on food safety.
And Professor, just in wrapping up, just speak to us briefly about the food insecurity that people are actually experiencing in South Africa, and what can be done to resolve that problem.
What's very important is to keep in mind the theme for World Food Safety Day. It's safe food for a healthy tomorrow. So if we talk about food insecurity, it means that every food product that's produced must be kept safe along that whole supply chain. And we must be very careful that we are not dumping unsafe food into the informal sector or allow people that cannot afford food, and that we, particularly when we talk about food donations, we must make sure it's safe because it's a human right to have access to safe food for all. And if we're really going to address food security, we have that responsibility. It's also about equality, dignity, well-being, happiness, and growing our economy. So I really believe government, and maybe this is a challenge for our president, we need a food safety authority. We need to put food safety on the agenda.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Lisa Korsten, who is the Director for the Center of Food and Security at the University of Pretoria, and Thabang Msimango, who has an MSc in Biotechnology, also from the University of Pretoria, putting a challenge there to the President that we should have a food security authority. Well,